Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson. In the last one, you have learned about some of the predominant chords, and one of those was chord 4. In this lesson, I am going to talk to you about chord 4/6, chord 4 in the first inversion in the minor key, and we are also going to talk about chord 6. Furthermore, you are going to learn about two kinds of cadences, a Phrygian cadence and a deceptive cadence. Okay, we've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. In the last lesson, you have learned about the predominant harmonies, one of which was chord 4. In this lesson, I am going to show you what happens when we invert chord 4 in a minor key. Why the minor key and not a major one? Because chord 4/6, which is chord 4 in the first inversion, has acquired a particular function in the minor keys. Chord 4/6 is made of the 6th, 1st, and the 4th degree of the scale. Because of having the 6th degree of the scale in the bass, we can have an interesting bass line when moving from that chord onto chord 5. Take a look at this example in A minor. I'm going to play it for you. In this example, we have a cadence that is going from chord 4/6 onto chord 5. Again, 4/6 and 5. And this kind of cadence, these two chords, 4/6 and 5, is called the Phrygian cadence, and it is characterized by that half-step motion in the bass from the predominant harmony onto the dominant. Notice that the Phrygian cadence is a half cadence. It stops on the dominant. But of course, you could continue in this example. And resolve it onto the tonic. Okay, so as you have learned this new kind of a cadence, Phrygian cadence in the minor key, now let's move on to another chord, chord 6. Chord 6 is made of the following degrees of the scale: the 6th, the 1st, and the 3rd degree. In terms of doubling, you can double whatever you want in chord 6. However, if you are in a minor key, do not double the 6th degree of the scale. And this is the very same rule that you learned in the last lesson about chords 4 and 2/6 in minor. So generally remember that if you are in a minor key, do not double the 6th degree of the scale. Now, before we go into details about how chord 6 functions, let's go through some general rules of voice leading. In the last lesson, you learned how to lead the voices when the roots of two chords were a second apart. We are going to call this root movement bisecond. Root movement bisecond, or root movement by step. And in that case, when we have root movement by step, we have no common tones between the two chords. And this is when we apply the rule of thumb to move all the upper voices in the contrary motion with the bass. If we have root movement by third, like in this example, going from chord 1 to 6, if we have root movement by third, there will be two common tones between these two chords, and you should keep them in the same voices. And if we have root movement by a fourth down or a fifth up, like in this example, there will be one common tone. Keep it in the same voice. I would like you to remember these rules as we go through this lesson, and as you complete your own harmonizations, pay attention to the root movement and the accompanying rule of thumb. Is the root movement by second? Is it by a third? Is it by a fourth or a fifth? According to the situation, you should remember how many common tones you are able to keep, and you should keep them in the same voices. Okay, so it is the time for us to ask, what is the function of chord 6? What does it do, and what does it accomplish in a musical composition? There are two functions that chord 6 could fulfill. First, it can be a resolution in the cadence. Or the second function is it can be a predominant chord. So let's start with the first one. In an authentic cadence, the dominant resolves onto the tonic. Thus, the tonic functions as the resolution of the dominant. There is, however, another type of the cadence called deceptive cadence, in which it is chord 6 that is the resolution. Instead of we have so the cadence starts off just like a standard cadence, and right in the moment where you expect to come back home to the tonic, boom, chord 6 jumps in instead. Your ear has been deceived, and hence the name of the cadence, deceptive cadence. Take a look at these examples. Think of your voice leading by root movement and write the chords 5, 6 according to what you now know. Do the same in minor, remembering to approach the leading tone from above. The deceptive cadence is not a final cadence. Listen to the following example, which shows you how chord 6 is used to expand a phrase. We start on the tonic and we expand it to 1/6. Then we have the predominant 4, then the dominant 7th chord, and then instead of chord 1 we have chord 6, which deceives us and makes us continue with 2, 6, another predominant, then the dominant 7th, and the final resolution into 1. Now, chord 6 can also function as a predominant, which means that you now can use the following predominants: 2, 2, 6, 4, and 6. Take a look at this chord progression. When harmonizing it, pay attention to whether the roots are a step, a third, or a fourth apart. and accomplish the voice leading accordingly. Feel free to pause the video to complete that exercise. Also notice that chord 6 in a major key is a minor chord, and chord 6 in a minor key is a major chord. As you now know so many predominants, I have some good news for you. You don't have to choose only one. You can have a string of predominant chords, including all of them in a row, in any combination you wish. However, there is an order of predominants that must be followed. 6, 4, 2. It's falling thirds. The roots of those chords are falling thirds. 6, 4, and 2. Never any other way around. So for example, it will be fine to have a progression going from the tonic via chord 6, then chord 2, then chord 5, and resolving onto the tonic. But starting with the tonic, then having chord 2, then having chord 4, and then chord 5, resolving on the tonic will not be okay. So remember the order of the predominants: 6, 4, and 2. Now listen to this example of a chord progression that uses more than just one predominant. We're starting on the tonic, then we're going on to chord 6, a minor chord 6 because we are in a major key, then chord 4, then chord 5 with the added 7th so that we have 5/7 chord, and then the resolution to the tonic. Now pay attention to the bass moving in this chord progression and ask yourself, by what intervals does this bass move? All of these chords are in root position, so our question can be, by what intervals do the roots move? From chord 1 to chord 6, I'm playing the bass notes louder, to chord 4. These 3 chords, we had root movement by thirds. And you know which rule of voice leading to apply. Then from chord 4, we're going to move up to chord 5, and our bass moves by 1 step, which means that we have no common tones to keep. And then we have the final resolution to chord 1. And just take a look at another example of also using 2 predominants. Again, the tonic, again chord 6, and then chord 2, then the dominant and the resolution. Listen to it again. And here, by what intervals do the roots move? A third, then a 5th down, then a 4th up, and then resolving onto the tonic. Congratulations, this is it for today's lesson on chord 4/6 and the Phrygian cadence, and chord 6 and the deceptive cadence. Don't forget to move on to the next parts of the lesson where you will be able to play around with all the chords that you have learned so far, where you will be able to make use of that already rich vocabulary of tonal harmony.